You've probably heard the phrase the Dark Ages before, usually with a vague sense that it refers to some mysterious period of history in Europe somewhere between ancient times and the Renaissance. But when exactly was this dark period, and what makes it so dark? Well, join me for a sweeping journey through 1,000 years of medieval history to find out. We'll start by exploring the fall of the Western Roman Empire and the emergence of feudalism, which dominated Europe for centuries. Then we'll look at the lives of knights and their castles, as well as the impact of the Crusades. Along the way, we'll uncover the stories of plague, conquest, and culture that shaped this pivotal era. But first, let's define our terms. When people talk about the Dark Ages, they're usually referring to the Middle Ages. This was a period in European history that lasted from the 5th to the 15th century, roughly 1,000 years. It's called the Middle Ages because it falls between the ancient world and the modern period. In this period, Europe went from being part of a vast empire to being a collection of small kingdoms. It was a time of great change and upheaval, but also of cultural and intellectual growth. So why is it called the Dark Ages? Well, that's because some historians have argued that there was a decline in culture, learning, and progress during this time. Compared to the classical period, when Rome was at its peak, life in medieval Europe seemed pretty dark. There were wars, disease, and poverty everywhere. In hindsight, however, we now know that things weren't as bad as they may seem. In fact, during the Middle Ages, Europe experienced many advances in science, art, and technology. For example, new farming techniques led to an increase in food production and population growth. The invention of the printing press allowed for the mass production of books, which helped to spread knowledge and education throughout Europe. And the development of universities provided opportunities for people to pursue higher learning. So why do we still think of the Middle Ages as a dark period? One reason is that it was a time when most people couldn't read or write. The literacy rates were high and access to education was limited, especially for women. This made it difficult for people to understand what was happening in the world around them and left them more vulnerable to propaganda and manipulation. Another reason is that during the Middle Ages, there was a lot of superstition and religious fervor. People believed that the world was full of magic and witchcraft, and they were often persecuted for practicing these so-called dark arts. Religion played a major role in people's lives, and it was used by those in power to control the masses. But despite all the darkness, there was still plenty of light to go around. During the Middle Ages, Europe saw the rise of some of the most iconic figures in history. Joan of Arc, King Arthur, Robin Hood, and others captured the imaginations of people around the world, and their stories continue to be told and retold today. In the end, whether you view the Middle Ages as a dark or a light period depends on your perspective. There were certainly many negative aspects to this time, such as the lack of education and the prevalence of superstition. However, there were also plenty of positive developments, such as advances in science, art, and technology. Ultimately, it's up to each individual to decide how they view this fascinating period of history. As you travel back in time to explore medieval Europe, keep in mind that this was a complex and dynamic era that saw significant changes and developments. With that in mind, let's dive into the rich tapestry of medieval history and discover the secrets of this captivating past. But before we continue, let's talk about feudalism. Feudalism was a system of government and land ownership that developed in medieval Europe after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Under this system, the king granted land to nobles in exchange for their loyalty and military service. The nobles then divided their land among lesser nobles and peasants who farmed the land and paid taxes to their lord. This created a hierarchical society with the king at the top and the peasants at the bottom. The feudal system had both advantages and disadvantages. On the one hand, it provided a stable form of government and a clear system of land ownership. This made it possible for the king to raise an army to defend his kingdom and for the nobles to maintain order among the peasants. On the other hand, feudalism also created a rigid social hierarchy that limited social mobility and led to widespread inequality. Peasants were often subject to the whims of their lords and had little control over their own lives. The Black Death, A devastating outbreak of bubonic plague that occurred in Europe in the 14th century had a profound impact on feudalism and medieval society as a whole. The plague is estimated to have killed around half of Europe's population, which led to a shortage of labor and a weakening of the feudal system. As the death toll mounted, peasants began to flee their villages and abandon the farms, which disrupted the agricultural economy that had sustained feudalism. This, coupled with growing discontent over high taxes and oppressive labor laws, ultimately contributed to the demise of the feudal system in Europe. Another key event that shaped the Middle Ages was the Crusades. These were a series of religious wars that took place between the 11th and 13th centuries, during which European Christians launched attacks on Muslim-controlled territories in the Middle East. The Crusades were triggered by a number of factors, including the desire to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control, to gain access to valuable trade routes, and to take advantage of the political instability in the region. The most famous crusade was the First Crusade, which resulted in the establishment of several Crusader states in the Levant. However, the Crusades ultimately failed to achieve their long-term goals and had a significant impact on relations between Christians and Muslims. Medieval Europe was a time of great upheaval and change, but it was also a period of immense creativity and innovation. Despite the challenges and hardships faced by the people of the Middle Ages, they produced some of the most iconic works of art, literature, and architecture in history. From the towering cathedrals of Europe to the epic poems of the time, medieval Europe left an indelible mark on human culture. During the Middle Ages, Europe was home to some of the most powerful and influential kings in history. One of the most notable was Charlemagne, who was crowned the first Holy Roman Emperor in the year 800. He is remembered for his contributions to the spread of Christianity and for his efforts to promote education and learning. Another important medieval monarch was Richard the Lionheart, a legendary medieval warrior who is said to have fought in the Third Crusade. Richard is celebrated as a symbol of courage and chivalry, and his deeds have been immortalized in countless works of art and literature. Medieval Europe was not just a time of warfare and conquest, but also of cultural exchange and innovation. As different peoples and cultures came into contact with each other, they shared ideas and customs which led to the development of new artistic styles, scientific discoveries, and literary masterpieces. For example, the Byzantine Empire, known for its rich culture and artistic achievements, had a profound influence on the development of medieval art. The exchange of ideas between the East and West also led to the development of new technologies and innovations. Despite the challenges and hardships faced by medieval Europeans, they achieved remarkable feats of engineering and construction. They built impressive structures such as castles, cathedrals, and bridges that stood the test of time. These architectural marvels not only served practical purposes, but also reflected the ingenuity and creativity of the people who built them. As you delve deeper into the history of medieval Europe, you'll encounter a cast of characters that will captivate your imagination. From valiant knights to cunning queens, each person has a unique story to tell. You'll learn about the lives of medieval royalty and the intrigues and rivalries that shaped their world. But you'll also encounter the stories of ordinary people, the peasants, merchants, and artisans who made up the backbone of medieval society. By exploring the lives of these individuals, you'll gain a deeper understanding of the social and economic structures of the time and the challenges they faced. One way to immerse yourself in the world of medieval Europe is to explore its iconic castles. These imposing structures are not only symbols of medieval power and wealth, but also offer a window into the daily life of medieval nobility by visiting a castle like Windsor Castle or Neuschwanstein Castle. You can experience the grandeur and opulence of medieval royalty. Another way to experience the Middle Ages is by attending a reenactment event. These events bring history to life by recreating battles, tournaments, and other aspects of medieval life. You can watch knights in shining armor joust and fight, or you can even participate in a battle reenactment yourself. To truly appreciate the legacy of the Middle Ages, it's essential to visit the places where history was made. Sites like Stonehenge and the Acropolis offer a tangible connection to the past and allow you to explore the roots of medieval culture by walking in the footsteps of those who came before us. we can better understand the foundations of medieval Europe. And if you want to dig deeper into the history of medieval Europe, consider visiting a museum dedicated to the period. Many museums have artifacts and exhibits that provide a glimpse into the daily life of medieval Europeans. You can see everything from medieval weapons and armor to clothing and household items. The Middle Ages was a period of significant transformation in European history, from the fall of the Western Roman Empire to the emergence of powerful kingdoms. The medieval era witnessed profound changes in society, culture, and politics. If you want to learn more about this fascinating period, subscribe for more videos that bring history to life.